Qubits. I am live here at DigiMarCon in Texpo in New York City. And I am here talking with somebody who just kind of took me off guard. He has so much information and just valuable insight around AI and some of the things that I know a lot of you are trying to figure out how to adopt into your workflows and how to use. So I wanted to just have a conversation, and I cut him off in the middle of our conversation just over here in the conference area, and I was like, hey, let's do a podcast because I know you guys will like it. So you want to give us a little introduction into yourself and,
Sure.
and the company you're representing?
Yeah, great. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a great reason to have a conversation cut off is to be invited on the show. So, my name is Blaze Hope, and my company is Origin Hope. We only started marketing in February. We've been doing person-to-person, proving use cases across industries and verticals for the past 4 years, and we're accelerating things because of ChatGPT. This was one of our original events just to test and see what it would be good for. But what we do is we produce any content, any format, any volume of it, any speed, and in any language, 40 to 95% cheaper than anything else on the market. We are starting to enter the technologies of our partners that we've developed with them, that we have ourselves, into competitions, and they're winning. And we are obviously very proud of the work that we've done. But I used to be a journalist that started out as something is broken in how content is created, and it needs to be fixed. And that's it in a nutshell. And it's the humans and the technology going hand in hand, because I don't think that's working very well so far.
Nice. So this is going to be a 72-hour podcast. We will be here for a while. We're going to talk about this topic because it's beefy. I'm just kidding. We're going to cover as much as we can. So one of the things that I want to do is, if you don't mind, I think that, and you do such a fantastic job of this, I've learned in the last 5 to 10 minutes of knowing you. You do a very good job of taking very complex technical language, things that are difficult for somebody that's not been in that field and doesn't understand that, taking it and breaking it down and making it something that even a 10-year-old will understand, right? So if you don't mind, could you take a couple of the technical terms right now that are floating around, generative AI, LLM, those terms that are kind of like floating around out there that I believe are making individuals that need to be adopting and using this technology intimidated because they're like, I'm not techie, right? Mm-hmm. So can you break those terms down to something that are really easy to understand?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I think there's been two problems that are happening, which is with coding. Coding codes a language, right? And you have to learn a language to be able to speak it. And just because of the way things have gone, the people who are very good at coding have ended up not also being trained, for example, in public speaking or relations or doing the thing that allows you to explain to other people what you do and how something works in language that is not your own. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first thing. You've got to think about things like that. And the second is, it's just logic, right? And the best example is a calculator.
Okay.
We can do long division, we can do maths and multiplication, but a calculator can do it really quickly. When you start talking about AI or all of these things, what they're doing is they're looking at something that we need done, we've done before, but it's just doing it en masse much faster than we can as a computer. And you're just creating a language that tells it, do that. That's okay. What that comes down to. And if you are a technical person and I say something and you think, well, technically, technically,
we are
maybe
breaking it down so
there's
it's understandable. Right.
But yeah, you don't need to understand the technicalities of something to understand the paths of logic you have to follow to understand how a function can be created or how things work.
Great. So as far as what's a large language model and how does that translate into ChatGPT? When somebody says just large language model, what does that mean?
Sure. I'm floating around. So we stopped at NLP, NLG, right? Natural language processing, natural language generation, large language models. So when people talk about machine learning, mm-hmm. It's calculations to have an outcome, and it's inputting a huge amount of information, data, that you then make calculations based on the logic that's followed behind that. So when something learns, what it's actually doing is it's analyzing a ton of data, mm-hmm. and basically reverse engineering what logical steps would have created that.
Okay.
And then it's laying them out. So if it's the example is a dictionary, right? Which I'll also use again for NLP and NLG in a second. You give something a dictionary, and because it's a computer, it can imbibe a huge amount of information. Give it a set of rules on grammar, it can imbibe a huge amount of that. It can identify instantly from every entry in the dictionary, because it's got a V or an N next to it, what's a noun, what's a pronoun, how they work from the grammar book, and bang, it can smack out a sentence that is grammatically correct. That fast, right? And it would take us forever to read a dictionary.
Right.
Because that is the difference between a computer and that. And then a language learning model is how we use that information. So you and I speaking in a marketing context, and this conversation times 100,000 online, different people having conversations about marketing, a language learning model is looking at that and thinking, how can I emulate a conversation about marketing? Or how can I emulate the language that one would use? And then this is the method by which that analysis occurs is what a large language model effectively is.
Okay.
So we have one, our partners have one that is specifically for news generation or for content creation. But you can use that for that, and you can use it. But language evolves. So next week it might not be hip. So you don't want to really use it for a tweet. I don't know. I can't believe I used the word hip, but it's going to make the point. But then NLP, and if you don't mind me running with this a bit. So when people say NLP, NLG, it's just references to the process. So if you walk it through, like, natural language processing is, I need to learn about engineering. I'm going to read 1 million books about engineering. We cannot read 1 million books about engineering. But there are 1 million books digitized out there about engineering. And the computer can read it. Right, so read it. And be able to sort it, collate it. Now, what you can do is teach it how to sort it, how to collate it. So it has a way to refer to the concepts that you've now separated out into identifiable elements, right?
Okay.
That's natural language processing. Natural language generation is reverse engineer that.
Right.
Spit something
Putting it out.
That makes sense from what you just pulled in. And that kind of selective
It's essentially
focus,
the in and the out.
the in and the out.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. And the selection process, the process by which you tell it what to focus on, by which it is able to separate out according to what you teach it, that's the difficult part. So when people say, oh, yes, you've got these massive things, a lot of the tools that we're seeing here in the market, they've been around for quite a while in lots of different iterations. And just creating, because just having the tools is not the difficult part. The difficult part is, how do you set it up for success so that it can do that repeatedly without you having to intervene, so that you can go do the next thing? Because if something, if you have a language processing model that generates something and it's cool 60% of the time, you still got to check.
Right.
So it's basically useless. If you have to check, you don't have a factory that's 60% effective at producing it
means you still have to check 100%
You got to
of
check
it.
it. So it's like, well, what's the point? If you had to check every single toy that you made, right, and even and you didn't have a computer program to do it, why would you even want the factory at that point? Go get 1 million different craftsmen in 1 million different areas to produce it by scratch. So you've got to think about it as, imagine the Industrial Revolution. You make a factory. Why do you make a factory? Because it does something reliably and in a way that you can control, and then you can get out of the way and go focus on something else. And that is AI.
Essentially, you're talking about delegation.
You're delegating a task.
Yeah.
If you think about, if you want to layer a task, I don't know, building a house. Okay, fine, whatever. Writing the script for a video. And you layer, doing the research. And there's, here, and you figure out how to automate doing the research for the kind of video that you want, right? Automate, and that level's full. And you're like, great, 99.9% reliable. I'm going to move on to the next layer. But the next layer is patchy, and there's a big hole here, and you have to fill that in with human intervention. You now can't use that layer. So what you've got is that one layer. And even if up here you've got an amazing one that's fully 100%, but getting from there to there, why would you even bother using that layer at all? And what we do as a company is, without making this in, is we patch those layers so we can take advantage of stuff that's coming on the market all the time, and then build tools to help us do that better, and also build targeted tools in areas we feel are not being addressed that we can make use of and pass on to our clients. And that's the big misunderstanding of all of this is you've got to think about this as just another machine, and it is not going to have the creative output. We can't even model our creative decision making. Even if we have quantum computing, which will come, we still can't model it. we don't even know. I mean, we are so far away from understanding neuro processes on the way that we'd actually be able to automate it. That a lot of the fear or hype is people not really understanding what the function of AI actually is and thinking it's sort of actually super dangerous. I mean, it's not dangerous. It's as dangerous as anything is. If you let
we are lacking regulations around using this technology right now, and there are dangers out there that are not that we are not being protected around, and there's not education around how this technology is working because it's just moving so quickly in adoption. Right.
Yeah, and I understand that when things move quickly, it scares people. But I think one thing to understand is, we're aware that it's moving quickly. I remember when the internet was out, when I was a teenager, and people were like, God, I've heard that you can, see topless women on the internet, and it's like, I watched someone get killed on a video that someone shared with me this morning. And this is not that I sorted out, but it's like what people refer to as the dark web. At that time, regulators and parents, they had no idea what the internet was and how it worked. And what you'd only find on the dark web now could just be around the corner. And it took a while before it actually brought that into level. So we were in a more dangerous position there.
The beautiful thing is, no worries. I just think the beautiful thing is that our world is full of problem solvers. And we are going to have solutions around the dangers that are coming and that are out there, because it is, I mean, I've noticed an intake and a higher amount of phishing and hacking and, there's TikToks and videos about how, different strategies are being deployed using the AI technology. And that's just a fact. However, our world is full of entrepreneurs and innovative thinkers that know how to use this technology, and they are building and developing solutions and trying to get them out there right now. And I think that that's something that you're absolutely right. We've gone through seasons in society where we have this new technology that comes in. It's going to just change and evolve the world, right? And you have to allow that process to happen and allow those solutions to come in and exist around the technology. And I think we're just kind of in that zone where that's happening, right?
Yeah.
And it's very important. My talk tomorrow is going to be on really just allowing for this technology to be something that you're not shying away from, and allowing it to be something that that comes into your world and you learn it and you're not afraid of it. And you realize, I do believe personally that this is a train that's moving, and it has been moving, as you said, for a very long time. And ChatGPT is, I think, the front runner in pushing that mass adoption at scale and pushing the adoption that's going to drive everyone understanding how to use this in a broader scale across their lives, right? But to what you and I were saying earlier, this has existed for, everyone understands that when you go to Google Docs, it's going to tell you when you misspell a word. And that is the same thing, right? It's been reading our information and processing that information and generating output to help us do better. It just hasn't been doing it at scale as much in our day-to-day. And I think ChatGPT had, in a matter of 5 days, 1 million users. In a matter of a month, 100 million users. And when you're looking at having 100 million users and that adoption rate, it's not going away. And so we really that's part of the reason I wanted to grab you and sit you down is I think it's very important to not let the technical words that can be so intimidating. The technical language around this, there's a simplicity to it. There's a simplicity to how to leverage and use this software and this technology and how to put it into your day-to-day. And it can be life-changing if you allow for it to penetrate your day-to-day and use it. And I genuinely want to see individuals not be put off by technical terminology and not feel like they can't, because I think sometimes that can happen. And, I'm in the digital marketing industry, and it's happened for a very long time in the digital marketing industry where experts arise and they use these terms that you just don't understand. And if they were to just carve the terminology away, it would be a very simple concept that everyone could understand. And it's the same thing, I think, with AI right now, that there's a simplicity to it.
Yeah. Everything that you've said is correct. You do need to understand things, and sometimes most of the time it's accidental. Sometimes people are using it to scare people a bit, so they sound, that they're sort of a really truly unique authority. And Yes, often many people are, but addressing the fear, that's the number one problem. What ChatGPT has done is push this into the consciousness to the point of you've got to discuss it. Like
Yeah.
you've got to deal with it. But disseminating the fear really is silly. Because where someone to understand it in terms of the building blocks, breaking it down into tools, the fear goes away immediately because that's something everybody can relate to. Everybody uses tools to some degree. And one of the things, the point is that you were making, you're starting to move towards, this is the need for authenticity. There was a big education drive in the UK. We need more people who are good at maths. Yeah, but what actually is much more important is people who can present and direct tools that we're going to have at our disposal pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
And authenticity is what's going to relate. If everybody can create, a brilliantly written blog post, that's not the thing that they're going to need anymore.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think authenticity on many levels, because what you're talking about authenticity on the actual content level is, Google's EAT algorithm. Google has been saying for a while, they want to know that somebody has authority and expertise in a certain area, and that's the content that they want, right? But Becca and I, one of my teammates, we were talking this morning, and I was talking about, bringing technology like ChatGPT and bringing AI into the way that we work. It's going to be very, very important that we normalize this and we are authentic about the way that we're working together as team members and as a team. And if you're leveraging AI to get an answer, and you're leveraging that AI to give you an output, to not pretend like it's yours, right?
Yeah.
And to not push yourself out as an authority that you're not, but to actually normalize the use of this technology and say, hey, this I got this from ChatGPT, and this is what ChatGPT said, and so that's gonna that authenticity, I believe, is gonna be so important, because I don't know about anybody else, but I've started to think, now that I've started really using ChatGPT, I've started to question information I'm getting from others and thinking, like, is this genuinely this person saying this? And it's something sensitive, right? And it's making me question if it's really coming from them. And I think I think authenticity is going to be important on a whole nother level. That individuals are authentic about where the information is coming from and how they are getting it, and normalizing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, manicured images are not desperately relatable for a very good reason. And what some people say, for example, the social media age and depression, you look at people, living their best life, it's a false image of what they're doing. Or it's the curated perfect image. And it's going to be the same for companies. It's going to be the same for politicians, right? Anyone who looks faultless or is maintaining an air of
perfection that's unattainable. Yeah.
This is clearly a lie, right? It's clearly a fabrication. So people are going to lose patience with it. And the craving for authenticity is going to be the craving imperfections.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to tell, well, what's a manufactured imperfection and what's a real one. I mean, we can, and again, this goes back into things that we can quantify and things that you can't. Being in front of someone, and your brain processing their eye movements that we can't even see. We can't even model that. We know that they're happening. We're starting to try and invest in that. But making a mistake while you give a speech, or while you're reading the news, or while you're having a discussion in a webinar, the subtle emphases that are leaked out subconsciously, even from that. And AI can't do that. And when people feel, if you're ever watching YouTube and you get the narration voices, even when they sound AI, those videos those channels always end up tanking. Always. And it's because we don't really trust them. Because we'd rather listen to someone who doesn't sound as professional and who makes mistakes there. The whole point, example, of YouTube is it created a relationship, which is why the format's changed. Which is why true crime's a great example. I don't know if you noticed, but all these shows on Netflix, how much raw interrogation footage you now see. That's because of true crime YouTubers. That's 100% why, who would get a hold, via police archives of interrogation footage, and they just put it up and analyze it. And that was so unique. No overproducing, no flashy transitions, and they've just disappeared. All those transitions, they've gone. From television, from watching streaming.
I know social media algorithms are already heading that way. I actually just read one of the influencers I follow. She's very authentic about how she's leveraging platforms. And she said that all of the content that's working for her right now is raw, unedited, untouched, very genuine. And you're moving away from the edited, cleaned up version of anything. And platforms are even evolving in that direction. Well, I genuinely feel like we could talk for hours, but look, I think happy hour is starting. You're missing your chance.
Well, no, so got to jump on. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, continue the conversation, learn more about what you're doing, how should they find you?
OriginHope.com. I'm on social media. You can reach out to me anyway, but feel free to jump on our website. And obviously, thank you for having me. And if I will say all of this, it's going to be more important than ever to be a business partner with integrity, to be a person who's good, because if you can't fake that in front of people. And ultimately, that's why it's a brighter future. That's why these things are getting us there, because tolerance, a mask of perfection, is not going to be good enough. It's going to have to be a mask of imperfection.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.